In this very well packaged parcel is a box from a company named Bigme. And since the box also says 7-inch, apparently that is some device with a screen. The exact model is JD Reed Bigme B751C. And actually inside the sleeve there is not one but two boxes. In the smaller box there is a book cover style case, and the other one contains the device itself, which is obviously an e-book reader. However, it's much more than that. Anyway, let's quickly see the packaging. Also included is a stylus. The stylus is made of aluminum, it's colored in black, it has two buttons, and obviously this is an active stylus. And it requires power to operate, and this power is delivered by a quadruple A battery. This battery is even smaller than AAA battery, and this is exactly the same battery that is used in, for example, Microsoft Surface Pen, and it may be a little bit challenging to source this battery. However, more on that later. Also included is some instructions manual, a USB-A to USB Type-C lead. This is a USB 2.0 cable, a slot extraction tool, and a couple extra stylus tips in case you need to replace the installed one. And also there is a special ring, which is a tool to ease the stylus extraction process. And this is basically what you have in the packaging. The device itself is quite light and very thin, however it's obviously larger than your average smartphone, and it probably won't fit in a pocket unless it's a really large pocket on a winter coat or jacket. However, in most cases you will have to carry this device in a bag. When you remove the protective film, the first thing that strikes you is that the Bigme logo was not actually printed on the protective film, it is showing on the screen. And mind you, the device is in power off state. Obviously, the display uses e-ink technology, and even more, it's a color e-ink technology, and that is why it doesn't use power to actually display the image. E-ink displays only use power to change the image. If the image is static, no power is used, and that is why the image could be displayed even when the device is actually powered off. On the front next to the display are two buttons. They could be reconfigured, but in most cases you will be using them as page up and page down to scroll through your books. There is nothing on the back of the device. On the top side there is the power button, which also turns the backlight on and off. On the lower part there is a microphone and something that looks very similar to a SIM card slot, and that is why a SIM card extraction tool was included in the package. However, it's not for a SIM card, it's for an SD card. The device supports up to 1 terabyte of SD card storage. On the left side there is a USB Type-C port, an LED charging indicator, and also a speaker. And that's it. There is no headphone jack, nothing else. You can still attach headphones though, but to do that you will need a digital adapter. Sometimes they are called USB DACs or simply USB sound cards. I've tried a few analog adapters that I have, since some devices have analog sound routed to the Type-C connector, but unfortunately they don't work with this device. So if you want to connect a wired headphone, you will either need a USB DAC adapter or USB headphones, which are digital ones. And of course you can always connect Bluetooth headphones, since this device has Bluetooth as well. As for the cover, the material is some kind of artificial suede. It's quite pleasant to touch. The problem is, whenever you touch it, it immediately shows your fingerprints. Well, naturally, the case has all the necessary cutouts, including for the USB port, which is unusually enough located on the left. However, the case has special cutouts, so using cables while the reader is in the case shouldn't be a problem. And it also has an elastic loop where you're supposed to put your stylus. And basically, to open the cover, you just hold your stylus and flip the cover. I'm not a big fan of this idea. I would prefer the stylus to be permanently attached to the main part of the case rather than to the flip part. And in general, the case and the pen is a little bit overpriced. And if you don't really need the case, and if you are not planning to draw on the device, you could probably save a substantial amount of money by opting out of the case and the stylus if such an option exists. These are accessories, they are nice to have, but they are not essential to use the device. Speaking of which, this device is actually not your usual ebook reader, it's a full-fledged Android tablet, but with an e-ink screen. When you first boot it, or boot it after reset, or start it after a factory reset, there is a quick and very informative tutorial on how to use it, during which you will be offered to create a BigMe account, which you don't need to, you can skip that step, and it also says that for after-sales support, you can contact the manufacturer through WhatsApp, which is an interesting point. And when you finally see the desktop or the home screen, it's some kind of a launcher on top of your regular Android. It also has Wi-Fi, and you can install apps, your normal Android apps. You can install them from files directly from APKs, or you can install them from Play Store, which is supported on this device. You can enter your Play Store and download apps your normal way, in the same fashion you will do it on any Android device, be it a smartphone, a tablet, or a smart TV. The Play Store works just fine, even though the device doesn't pass Google security and integrity checks. This BigMe 751C device has 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage, 51.5 of which is available to the user. The device is powered by 8-core processor from MTK, and in Antutu it reaches 97,000 points, which is of course very low if you plan to game on this device, but most probably you don't. Such a slow processor was used to maximize the battery life of this device. And if you are using this device to read books for about 4 to 6 hours a day, a full charge should last you about 5, 6, maybe 7 days. Of course, it's very dependent on which particular app you use to read your books, on your backlight settings, and whenever Wi-Fi is turned on or off. However, in most cases, this device will last you about a week on a full charge. The device detects when the cover is closed and it goes to standby, and also in the settings you can choose when it will go to standby and after which period of inactivity it will shut down. These two modes greatly reduce power consumption and can prolong the battery life when the device is not used. However, it's worth mentioning that return from standby is instantaneous. However, fully booting the device from shutdown takes quite a while. One thing on the battery life though, the firmware that the device was shipped with seems to be a little bit buggy, so when you connect the device to the internet, it will usually detect that there is an updated firmware and prompt you to update. Or you can just check for new firmware from the device settings. After the system update, the device became much more stable, the battery life has definitely improved, and I think they also fixed quite a few other issues. Well, since this is an ebook reader, it obviously supports different formats of books. It has a special library application which gives you instructions on where to put your files. So basically you just connect this device to a computer, put your books into any of the specified folders, and of course, since this is a connected device that has Wi-Fi, you can skip the computer part and download books directly to this device. Then go back to the library app on the e-reader and import them. And that's it. That's how you import content to this device. After you do that, they will be accessible and you can read them. Of course, the idea is you have all your reading apps on one device, so you can install Kindle and all other book reading apps onto this tablet and enjoy them on a single device. As it is becoming increasingly common and popular, this device also has some AI capabilities, but in my opinion it's more of a gimmick than something useful or practical. However, it may be convenient to have your AI chat open while you read a book, so you can ask AI any questions that arise from reading the book. And don't forget you also have internet. There is an internet browser and you can connect to Wi-Fi to browse the internet. For example, you can watch my YouTube channel in the browser on this device. You can also use the YouTube app for that. The sound will come through the onboard speaker, and it's a surprisingly good sounding speaker, which can also be used for narration if you use text-to-speech while reading your books, or for listening to audiobooks. Of course, as of now, the e-ink screens are barely usable for video. They are more for static images than for moving pictures. However, in this particular case, this screen is capable of almost 30 FPS, or hertz, which is more than enough to watch most of the videos, which tend to be either 24 frames or 30 frames per second. And the screen in this Bigme device is doing a remarkable job displaying moving images compared to the device of the olden days. Yes, it's not perfect, there is some ghosting. It sometimes refreshes itself by going completely dark. This is required by the e-ink technology, but still, I am very impressed how good this screen handles video for an e-ink device. The screen is 168 by 1264 pixels, which first of all makes it less than Full HD, and secondly, it's a 12:9 ratio, which is somewhat uncommon, and it also reports itself as a 60 Hz screen, even though I could only get about 29 or 30 Hz. But again, this is remarkably good for an e-ink screen. And also you have color. However, on e-ink, colors look very different from what we are used to on normal screens. They are very bleak, and the image looks more like it was drawn with a pencil rather than with vivid colors. But this is what e-ink is about. It tries to simulate paper. What is also interesting, if you make a screenshot, the device actually renders everything in full color. It's just the e-ink display cannot show those colors. It can also display image without backlight, which makes it much more easier on your eyes compared to normal screens which have backlight. Since there is no light coming from the screen into your eyes, since when the backlight is off, the screen only reflects light but doesn't emit light on its own, that lessens the fatigue from reading and also helps with headaches that you may have from normal screens. The screen is touchscreen and it supports 2 simultaneous presses, which is more than enough for an ebook. And of course, you have the stylus. This is a capacitive pen, and capacitive e-inks is also something quite new. The technology is not mature yet. However, you can still use the pen to draw right on the screen as if you were using a pen or a pencil. It recognizes pressure, so your lines can be thinner or thicker depending on how much you press on the pen. The pen also has 2 action buttons, and when you're not using it for 3 minutes, it automatically turns itself off, and to reactivate it, you have to press any button on the pen. Speaking of power, as I said in the beginning, this pen uses quadruple A batteries. They seem to last quite a while. You should get at least 5 months of active use from a single battery. However, when it comes to replace it, this may be a little bit tricky. They are not available in your grocery store. You will have to order them online. You can also order rechargeable variants of the same battery, which may be a much better investment than your regular batteries, especially if you already do own a charger for metal-nickel hybrid batteries. However, if you're in a situation when you need this battery now and you cannot wait for the delivery, there is another source of these batteries. Basically, what you need to do is to buy a regular 9-volt battery, disassemble it, and inside you will find not 1, not 2, not 3, but 6 of these quadruple A batteries. So if you're having trouble with finding these batteries, just scavenge them from a 9-volt battery. However, as I said, this stylus is a nice touch. However, it's much less usable than similar pens on devices with normal screens. All of them Microsoft Surface Pen, Apple Pencil, the Samsung stylus, all of them will give you better drawing experience than this particular thing, mostly because the technology is not mature enough. It has just emerged and it still needs a lot of improvements. So if you have an option to buy the device only, without the pen and without the case, that may be a better investment overall. However, if you want to draw on this device and use other pen-related features like handwriting recognition, you will have to use this active stylus. Normal capacitive pens could be used instead of a finger to tap on menus and icons, however, they are not recognized as a drawing pen. On the contrary, the supplied active pen could be used both for drawing and for navigating the interface. As for the cons of the device, they also come from the screen. As I said, this is a color screen, and currently, color e-ink screens are much dimmer than your grayscale e-ink screens. Those are brighter, but they don't have colors. So if you're going to use the device in direct sunlight, this color e-ink screen on Bigme may be much dimmer than a screen on a grayscale Kindle, for example. And it is also dimmer than the color competition this Bigme device has. So it's one of the dimmest color e-ink screens out there, unfortunately. However, there is a fix. In the settings, you can adjust the brightness of the screen, and if you go all the way to the right, it greatly increases contrast and the screen becomes much more readable in direct sunlight, but unfortunately the color tends to be a little bit orangey on this maximum brightness setting. However, it's much more usable with the brightness all the way up. So, in conclusion, this is a very interesting device. The build quality is very decent. The performance is impressive for an ebook reader. It's also your normal Android, so you can install any apps you want. You can enjoy all your bookstore apps on a single device. And by the way, Android is version 11, definitely not the most recent one, but it still will be supported for quite a long time. It could also be used as an okayish drawing tablet. It can be used to browse the internet. You can even install some Android apps that allow this device to be used as a second monitor with your laptop or PC. And whenever you need to read something lengthy, just push the window to this virtual wireless screen and read it on your e-reader, relieving your eyes fatigue. And in general, it's a very interesting and capable device. It also has a color screen, maybe not the best one, not the brightest one compared to grayscale e-ink screens, and even not the brightest one compared to other color e-ink screens, but nevertheless it's a very decent and good looking screen for an e-ink screen at this point in time. The technology will certainly develop, making this device obsolete in some point in time in the future, but as of now, this is a very decent device. However, you should be very cautious on the target audience. It's not complicated to use for a tech-savvy person like myself, for example, but I have to admit that the interface is not as straightforward and user-friendly as other options out there, and this may be too complicated for some people, especially for older folks who are used to easier to use devices like Kindle and similar things. So this device may be not for them. Anyway, that's all I can say about Bigme B751C at this point in time. If you're interested and want to purchase one, you will find the purchase links in the description under this video.
I'm the god of YouTube!
Like, subscribe, jingle bells.